Welcome back to another episode of A Gift from Adversity. Thank you so much for tuning in. My name is Juri Love. I'm your host. Today we're recording episode 78. Before we introduce our guest, I want to introduce myself and my book. Again, my name is Juri Love, and my book is called A Gift from Adversity. And this is available on Amazon. A Gift from Adversity. Subtitle is Overcoming Sexual Abuse, Domestic Violence, Bullying, and Homelessness. And you can search on Amazon. When I published my book in 2020, I felt really compelled to tell my story. But not only that, I got a lot of messages from all over the world that they are also the victim of these adversities. This year, I wanted to create a platform on social media that we can discuss about adversities and have difficult conversations and normalizing and destigmatizing mental health issues.
Mhm.
Not only talking about adversities, but also sharing the tools that people use to overcome. And I'm hoping that this podcast will help somebody out there and for the next generations to come. So let's invite our guest. We are having Luisa Morrone from Canada. Hi, Luisa. Thank you so much for being here today.
Well, thank you, Juri. I'm pleased to be here.
Wonderful. So, Luisa, before our first question, can you introduce yourself
hmm
and
hmm
where you coming in from and your website and social media?
Absolutely. Luisa Morrone, I'm the type 2 diabetes warrior. I live in a suburb just outside of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I guess what I do is I help type 2 diabetics reverse the disease, get them off medication, and help them lose weight if it's necessary. Not all diabetics have a weight issue.
And what are your social medias and
Oh,
website?
yes, that's right. So my social media handle in all places is my name, Luisa, Luisa Morrone, Morrone. I can be easily looked up on Facebook, on Instagram, and on TikTok. Those are my three playgrounds.
And you have quite followers.
Yes, I've built up quite a following. I've been doing this for about 2 years now, and I've got about 12,000 followers now. I've built a loyal fan base, that's for sure.
That's fantastic.
Yes, thank you.
Well, Luisa, let's just dive into our first question.
hmm
So, can you share your our audience
hmm
what was your adversity?
Okay, let me start. 8 years ago, I 8 years ago I was weighing 300, well, over 315 pounds. I had a hip problem, so my right hip needed to be replaced. But I couldn't qualify for the surgery because I was obese, and the doctors kept saying, "You're not going to heal properly." And so every year when I hobbled actually into my doctor's office using a cane, I couldn't walk 200 steps without writhing in pain. I would hobble into my doctor's office to be told, "Louisa, is there some way you can just manage to lose 15, 20 pounds this year?" And I would be like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, sure, doc. Of course I can. Of course I can." I would promise her. She would set me up with an appointment to go see a dietitian, a nutritionist, and I would lose a little bit of weight and then self sabotage so that the following year, when I hobbled back to see my doctor again, I had actually not lost weight, but gained an additional 15, 20 pounds. So I was always going the opposite direction, even though I desperately needed the hip surgery. On top of that, Jury, I had already seen my father who was a diabetic. He basically ended up on kidney dialysis at end of life. He struggled with type 2 diabetes. He was not overweight at all. He was quite a thin man. He passed away on dialysis machine, which is a brutal procedure for diabetics because their kidneys fail. On top of that, my father-in-law was also a type 2 diabetic who at end of life ended up on kidney dialysis. And on top of that, my own husband was already a 20-year diabetic. So 8 years ago, when I hobbled in there and had managed to gain 20 pounds, my doctor said to me, after warning you for a number of years that you were going to become a diabetic, Louisa, and you do know your father was one, so, and when you were pregnant you had gestational diabetes, so it was only a matter of time. She said, you are now a type 2 diabetic and you're going on medication. And I just said, huh, how did that happen? Because I was in denial. I didn't think it was going to happen to me. And so that we sat there, and she scratched her head. She said, well, we do know how it happened. You have been warned a number of years. You're going on medication. And I just saw a flash of what my life would be like, because all the diabetics in my life, when my father was first diagnosed, my father-in-law, my husband, was 2 pills. 2 pills became 4. 4 became 8. 8 became 16. And diabetics, typically, the blood sugars are not regulated. So then high blood pressures begin. So another pill for that. And typically, high cholesterol starts to happen. And it's just an endless journey toward kidney failure at the end of the day. So I walked away in shame, but I didn't do anything right away, Juri. I thought, this is my life. I'm going to go the way of my father, the way of my late father-in-law. I already knew what was going to happen to me, and I knew I wasn't going to get the hip surgery either. It was difficult. And then every so often, out of frustration, I would open Google and I would type things like, can I get rid of diabetes? Do I have to take pills for the rest of my life? What's my life going to be like when I'm on 18 pills like my father was? And at that point, my own husband was on 18 pills. So I knew. And every time I would shut the computer down, because you know what it said? The best way to get off pills as a type 2 diabetic and not have that trajectory of a life is to stop eating carbohydrates, to go on a keto and low carb lifestyle. And I was like, oh no, I can't give up rice, potatoes, noodles, bread. Uh-uh. No. And I would just shut the computer down and say, no way, can't do it. No, 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 no. But then as I began to continue to gain more weight, as the pills were not really helping with my blood sugars, I was not eating according to a diabetic lifestyle. I went to see the dietitian again. It was a specialized one for diabetes. She told me what to do. I followed it for a bit of time, but I was too hungry. I was too hungry. Typically, a diabetic is told eat 6 small meals a day. All those small meals did was make me hungrier. And when you're hungry, you don't really stick to the minuscule little portions that you're told to eat. So I was on this yo-yo, on this big wheel of going around and around in circles. My blood sugars were not regulating. And so one day I decided, after the, 100th time of Googling again, is there a way to get rid of diabetes and not take pills? I thought to myself, okay, do it. You've tried everything else. I had tried all kinds of different diet programs. And that weekend, you always start on a Monday, right? I'm going to start Monday. My father would always say, if I had $1 for every time you said you were going to start something on Monday, I'd be a rich man. So that weekend, I sat down and I ate all the carbohydrate foods I loved. Potatoes, potato chips, French fries, noodles, stir-fried rice, bread, toast bread, Italian paninis. I had a party with high carb foods. And on the Monday, I started. I started eating according to what I was told would help me get off medications. And you know what, Juri? That was 8 years ago. Within months, I got off medication. Within 6 months, I had lost enough weight to qualify for my surgery. Went in and got my surgery, threw away the cane, and 8 years later, I have lost 150 pounds. I no longer take medication. It's been 8 years since I've been off metformin. and I have never felt or looked better. I have also been able to assist my husband because his kidney was failing. So we can talk about that later if you want, or I can tell you what happened with him now. You guide me.
So let's focus on you and your adversity part of it, and let's
Mhm,
save the keto, and then
mhm,
let's save the
mhm,
tools part for the
mhm.
second question. I want to
Sure,
dissect a little bit, and I
sure.
want to talk a little bit about diabetes itself.
Mhm.
So for people who don't understand what diabetes means, and then what is
Okay.
diabetic means,
Yeah.
let's dissect on that.
Okay.
And I, unfortunately,
Mhm,
this September, blood
mhm,
test came back a little bit. My sugar was a little bit high, and then my doctor warned me pre-diabetic. And then I was never
mhm.
told that in my life. I'm 46. I'm kind of quite shocked, and
Mm. Yes.
to lose curve, whatever. So
Yes.
I
Right.
kind of started IF,
Mhm,
intermittent fasting. So
mhm,
they
mhm,
said
mhm.
check it back in a few months or so, on top
Right.
of thyroid condition that I have. So
Mhm, mhm,
I'm curious personally,
mhm,
what causes diabetes and what is really
mm, mhm.
diabetic means?
Well, I'll tell you right now that there are three types of diabetes, number one, and they really are very different from each other. So, firstly, most of us become type 2 diabetics later in life. So, you have been told that you're pre diabetic for type 2. I'll explain first what type 1 is. Type 1 is typically found in children, and it's because they are born without insulin in their body at all. The body is not producing any insulin in order to use the carbohydrates that you're eating. You know, we eat bread, we eat rice, we eat potatoes, vegetables. They all have carbohydrates. And so a type 1 is born without the ability to process it by way of insulin production. So for that's a different type. What you and I have, or what you being being told you're pre-diabetic, is called type 2. That shows up later in life, and it's mainly lifestyle related, Jury. It is what I call a disease of bad eating over your lifetime, basically. And that's because what happens is we all eat more carbs than we really need. You know, we don't eat the portions that we should. We overdo it. You know, we have a bowl of rice, we might have another bowl of rice. We have two slices of toast, we might go and have four slices of toast. What happens over the years is that the body can no longer produce the amount of insulin needed for the amount of carbohydrates you are putting in your body. Does that make sense to you, Jury?
Yes.
hmm So that's type 2. I call it the disease of bad eating. And now the medical professionals are calling dementia type 3. And so all what they all have in common, and we know what dementia is, it's a brain disease. What we all have in common, exclude type 1 because they're born without the insulin. Type 2 and 3, you're affected by the amounts of carbs and in particular the amount of sugar that you eat. That's basically a layman's explanation and a very simple explanation of what type 2 diabetes is. And let me give you a stat. Right now in North America, 40% of Canadians and Americans are either pre diabetic like you or already type 2 diabetics, or and on medication, or type 2 but haven't been to the doctor because they're in denial and they don't want to go hear it. So 40% right now of North Americans are dealing with type 2 diabetes. Very sobering.
And what is a fact? Like, say if I don't take care of myself, what would happen to me? And if I don't take medicines and then daily life,
Yeah,
what kind of health effect that's gonna
yeah.
influence my daily life?
Well, you could suffer from weight gain. Incessant, you're going to the bathroom, peeing. You're going to suffer from a lot of peeing. Thirst. As you're peeing, you're also getting very thirsty for water and soda. And of course, if you're a soda drinker, the more soda you're drinking, each can of Coke or Pepsi has 40 grams of sugar. And so my dad loved sugar, loved Coke, for example. You're trying to quench your thirst with something that's creating a big issue in your body, because 3 Coke cans is 120 grams of sugar. So what is going to happen long term to someone like yourself who's been told pre-diabetic, if you listened to me earlier, I had been told for a number of years by my doctor, Luisa, you're pre-diabetic. You got to watch yourself. Please portion the food you're eating. I didn't portion my food. No, no. I want 2 bowls of pasta. I want 3 pieces of pie. And so, and here's the problem with type 2 diabetes. It's called the silent killer. And I'll tell you why. No pain. There is absolutely no pain associated with diabetes. None. You can eat, um, you know, uh, 3 bowls of noodles, a piece of pie, a milkshake. These are all full of sugar, right? But there's no pain other than maybe gastrointestinal issues. Maybe, oh my goodness, I feel so full, but there isn't pain. And so, what I tell type 2 diabetics to shock them, to make them understand, is you're basically allergic to high carb foods. So if I told you, Juri, you are becoming allergic to lobster and seafood, would you eat it? Would you ever touch lobster again? No, because you know the consequences. You would go into shock. And if I told you, Juri, you're pretty close to becoming allergic to peanuts, you wouldn't eat peanuts, would you? But you've been told you're pre-diabetic, but you're probably still eating many of the foods that are slowly harming you because there's no pain. There's only pleasure when we eat. When we're enjoying a beautiful meal, which is high carb, we're not thinking about our disease, are we? No, we're enjoying that beautiful dish. What we don't realize is the amounts of carbs, and I kind of say carbs and sugar in the same breath, because whether your body gets the carb from a potato or a bowl of rice, or whether it gets it from a donut, your body is happy. Your body is saying, I'm getting the carbs I want for energy. And it really doesn't care whether it came from a potato or a donut, because the body needs fuel. Just like a car needs gas, our bodies use, our source of fuel is food. So typically, the body is using the carbohydrates in a food. So for example, brown rice has 48 grams of sugar. Okay. That's without adding anything. It has 48 grams of carbohydrates. So when you eat a bowl of rice with some meat and some vegetables, and the vegetables will have some carbs as well, your body is going to use the carbs in the rice and the vegetables. The meat doesn't have any carbs, so it's not going to use it as a source of energy. Your body will be like, oh, here comes the carbs. I, operate whatever. But what happens is the excess in certain people, the excess carbs that it didn't use for energy gets packed on as fat. That's why some diabetics start to struggle with their weight. The body is not releasing the carbohydrates. It keeps it for future energy. Now, what happens when you switch, as I did, from a high carbohydrate way of eating to a low carb or keto way of eating, is my body went looking for the carbs I usually gave it. I used to give it lots of carbs. Extra large pizza, big bowl of lasagna, potatoes, french fries, hamburgers with buns. But I switched. I started eating non-high carb foods, which we can talk about later. So my body, looking for the energy it needs, says, ha, no carbs, or very few carbs. So it starts to burn fat. The body needs something to burn. If I'm not giving it the carbs it wants, it's going to burn the fat. And that is how most people that I work with are able to lose weight, because when they switch from burning carbohydrates and storing the extra, and they switch to becoming what I call a fat burning machine. I am a fat burning machine. I do not give my body more than 20 grams of carbs per day. So, if you remember, I said a cup of rice, brown rice, has 48 grams of carbs. I'm eating for the whole day less than a half cup of rice of carbohydrates per day. What am I eating though? Right? You're wondering, well, you're not eating rice, potatoes, bread, pasta. What are you eating? Well, I eat well. I eat quantity and I eat a lot. But what I eat is fresh meat, fresh fish, fresh seafood, fresh vegetables, fresh berries, and I do eat dairy and cheese. And I make my own desserts with natural sweeteners. So I'm not denying myself. And if you heard what I talked about, everything is fresh. Fresh meat, fresh dairy, fresh cheese, fresh greens, fresh berries. Because we as a society also eat too many processed foods. I used to order 2 hamburgers, 2 fries, a big vanilla milkshake, 2 apple pies. That's what I had for lunch. So you can see how when I swapped from eating those high carb foods to keto and low carb is actually going back to eating whole foods, basically. Whole, fresh food. Not something from a box, not something from a can, and I don't buy anything in a bag. So does that make sense to you?
Yes, thank you so much. So we'll dive into the keto part of it later, but I want to dissect a little bit. So you said you were
Hmm.
about 300 pounds.
Over. I hit 315, 320 pounds. Yeah.
So I read your bio a little bit that
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
you had a clothes that you dreamt of wearing that you
Yeah.
could wear.
Yeah.
How did it make you feel when
Mm.
you had that weight and then,
Mm.
wearing what you
Hmm.
didn't want to wear? And then how
Mm.
was your mental health? You mentioned a little bit in your bio about depression.
Yep.
Like, how can you explain our audience in that state?
Mm. Well, first of all, well-meaning friends and family, they don't know they're doing it, but they fat shame you, right? There was a lot of, oh, you're having another piece of pizza. You just had five. That's your sixth piece. You want that? So, of course, our natural way of being is to rebel and say, yes, don't tell me what to do, you know? And then also, so they mean well because they don't want you to hurt yourself by eating something that they knew I was a diabetic by that time. Then, and some of the other things that happened to me would be looking through magazines, fashion magazines, and just wishing, oh my God, I love that outfit. It would never look good on me. And then seeing your friends, being out with your friends, and then wanting to take a picture, all of us together. And I would say, I'll take the picture. I would always step out. I would be the one taking the picture. I was never in the pictures. It was my way of not being seen. As well, my children sometimes go through our old photo albums of when they were babies and younger, and they say, Mom, there's not any pictures of you with us. There's lots of them with their father. Again, I didn't want to be in pictures. And now I cry. It hurts me to know there are not many pictures of me with my children. I denied myself memories of me with my children because I was so big and so embarrassed of being in those pictures. So I was taking pictures of them with their father, but not many of me. Sometimes if I had to go to a dinner or a wedding, the desperation, the sweat breaks out because you got to go and buy something and you can't go into the nice elegant boutiques. They don't have sizes for me. And then you end up in a department store and you're just praying that something that looks nice will fit. And sometimes it's ill fitting, but you're like, okay, it fits. A little tight, but it fits. I look kind of okay, but it's ill fitting and it's riding up and you don't really feel good, but it's the best you can do. But then you go home and then you go back to that one dress that you feel comfortable in and you end up not even wearing the new outfit that you bought for the wedding because you just know it doesn't look good or you don't feel confident that you're going to look good. There were so many episodes that, and then you say to yourself, I'm going to start on Monday. I'm going to start on Monday. I'm going to start. I start. Just like I would tell my doctor, oh, yes, doctor, this year, swear to God, when I come back, I'm going to, you watch, I'm going to come back and I'll have lost 25 pounds. And then the walk of shame as I go back the next year, and she can hear me coming with my cane, and I'm also breathing heavy. And I walk in and we weigh me, and she's like, Louisa, you've gained 18 pounds. How did this happen? And the shame, because I'm like, I did what you told me. I swear I followed what the dietitian said, but the doctor knows I'm lying, and I know I'm lying to her. But she's too kind. My doctor's lovely. She would be like, "Well, let's try harder next time. Let's talk again about what we're going to do this year." She was very patient with me. Some doctors I know get very frustrated with their patients, and I can understand why but it's just so hard to acknowledge, especially when I became a diabetic. I was like, how did I manage to do this? Then it's the anger at yourself. You've been warned, and yet you ended up becoming a diabetic anyway. Very hard to, it's just so hard. I have a lot of compassion with the people I work with. I've been in their shoes. I've walked that walk of shame.
And then, um, were you always overweight growing up, or did it start in your adult life?
Um, I guess up and down, up and down. I would maybe got became a little bit chubby as a child, but then, thinned out. Then put on weight. It was up and down. So I was one of those chronic up and down yo-yo dieters, which does impact your metabolism later in life. So it would be like, oh, got to go to the dance club, or I got to go to a wedding. Oh, I'm going to drop 10 pounds in a week. Yeah. Ooh, starve. I used to starve or go on this, cut the fat diet, count your calories, 900
Mhm.
calories a day. And then I would dump the weight I needed to dump, go to the wedding, look good, and then relax and gain it back. So it was a yo-yo dieting. And a lot of people will probably identify with that for sure. Yeah.
And then depression part of it is
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm,
mental health wise. So I know that you didn't want to be in the picture, and then you didn't
mm,
want, like,
yeah.
all this shame coming at you. But
Mm-hmm.
how do you describe, especially when you were this overweight stage, that
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
mental health wise, like, depression? Is it like almost beating yourself up, like, shaming you, or
Mm-hmm.
more kind of like a bullying type of thing from outside?
I would say that it was self-sabotage. You know, every person I know wakes up and I would go to sleep and plan my day. Oh, I'm going to have low-fat yogurt in the morning, and then I'm going to do this, and I'm going to eat just a half a breast of chicken and some boiled rice, no butter, no oil. You plan everything, and then you wake up and you maybe do the yogurt and the little bit of fruit, and then I'm hungry. I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm starving. And then you say, okay, I'm just going to go and buy one donut, and then I'll eat the donut, but I'll get back on track for lunchtime. But then the donut just opens up everything, and then you trick your brain. Then your brain says, oh, you screwed up the diet already. You screwed up. You started on Monday, and then your brain just says, well, you had a donut. Now you go and buy another box. Go buy a box of donuts. You've ruined the day. And why continue? You've ruined your week now. And by and then you've why even continue? Now the month is ruined. And now the whole year is ruined. So then your brain just says, don't bother. Don't do it. Don't do your plan that you dreamt of. And this is a cycle that most of us every night go through. Every night I would lie down and say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to have healthy breakfast. I'm going to follow it. And then every day by lunchtime, I'm having a burger, fries, pizza, because my brain is saying, you screwed up. You screwed up. You're a loser. And then you self medicate. We also use food to soothe. I knew when my husband was upset because he eats the same comforting foods I do. We would come home together and say, let's make some mashed potatoes and some grilled cheese sandwiches, and let's have some pasta, and let's have go get a whole loaf of like white bread and let's put jam and butter and peanut butter on it. That's what we would do. We soothe the very pain is coming from the food, and yet we're using the very thing that's harming us to soothe ourselves. And your brain and your endorphins, what do they call, the dopamine is just like happy for that few, for that half hour where you're eating this food, and then comes, "Ugh, what have I done?" And then you're back at square one again. It's a cycle of self-hatred, but soothing yourself with the very things that you that are harming you. And many people just feel like, I can't do it. I love it. Ends up that you end up loving a piece of cake more than your own life. I talk with some of my clients and some of the folks that come to me, and I say, you have got to love yourself enough to understand that that coconut cream pie is slowly doing harm to you, to your blood sugars, to your health. And yet we love that pie more than ourselves. It's very, very hard.
Well, thank you so much, Luisa, for explaining that stage,
Mhm,
mental stage. And then
mhm, mhm,
um,
mhm,
in Japan,
mm,
it's very different than America.
mhm,
So I think we eat a lot of rice, obviously, but we don't really see many obese people. I
mm-mm,
think
mhm,
I'm kind of shocked that I was told I'm pre-diabetic because I'm not overweight or anything,
mhm,
and
mhm,
I don't understand and where
mm,
it's coming from. And
mhm,
sometimes just like first thing is thank you so much for
mhm,
clarifying
mhm,
type 1 diabetes and type 2, and then the dementia one. But then also um the shame, self-sabotage, and then
mhm,
blood cycle, understanding that it's harming you, but
mm,
still
mm,
consuming it.
mhm.
And psychologically, um, you know it's gonna hurt you, and then but that's kind of like addiction part of it too.
I was going to say, and I have stated this many times, I'm going to say it now. Sugar slash carbohydrates is the most addictive substance on the planet. More addictive than alcohol, cocaine, or heroin. It is a statement that can shock, but when you think about it, when you tell someone, I want you to give up rice, potatoes, pasta, and fruit for the rest of your life, that's a hard one to, take, isn't it? But it is. I'm still addicted to the foods that were harming me. I would love to eat them, but I don't. I won't. I manage my addiction every day. Every day it pops up. Man, would I like to have a slice of apple pie with ice cream, you know? So it is an addiction. You're absolutely right, Juri. Absolutely. You just hit it on the nose.
And then another thing I wanted to mention is, say, in Japan, like we look thin, and
Mhm,
then even like a little bit of fattening, little bit of obese, like say, um,
mhm,
I think you've seen like a Japanese magazine, and then what
mhm,
we like really. I was model in Japan. I
mhm,
was on
mhm.
fashion magazine,
Right.
and we were always obviously encouraged to be thin,
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
um, even just a little bit weight. Like we have this like really bad words, like say for instance, daikon ashi, which is like a radish, like a big fat radish legs. And
Mm.
then like we have this shaming, fat shaming
Yep.
names
Yep.
for people, and it's not that bad. But then like
Mm. Mm.
when I came to America, I was very shocked with the size of the people, and
Mm.
the obesity level is completely different than
Mhm.
Japan. And I don't
Mm.
know why. But
Mhm.
when you see maybe some of the ingredient or maybe some of
Mhm.
diet in
Mhm.
America have
Mhm.
than Japan, I think
Mhm.
it's very, very different. I don't know about Canada, but maybe
North America. Let's call Canada and North Americans, meaning Canada and the U.S., pretty much eat the same way. Jury, it's easier to buy a prepared meal than it is to cook at home. Now, I'm of Italian background. You're from Japan. The countries that our parents came from, they worked out in the fields for 12, 14 hours. They burnt whatever sugars they ate. So in Italy, it was pasta. In Japan, it would be rice with fish, but they burnt it off. And it wasn't as processed as what we have here in North America. The bread my mother ate was handmade, milled, and kneaded and made at home. There is much more processed ingredients in the bread we're buying now. And so there's a big difference between also many of the ingredients accepted in the US are actually not accepted and are not allowed in foods in other countries like Europe and Japan. So, and I have to say that the Japanese diet, the Japanese lifestyle is very good. I love sashimi. You see, I can still enjoy Japanese food. I just don't eat the rice. I just go straight for sashimi. I will have a big platter of sashimi. So sashimi, for the listeners that may not know, is sushi without rice. And I don't order a California roll, which I don't consider really truly sushi. I ask for actual fish, all of the different fish, the eel, the raw tuna, the raw salmon, the raw octopus. That is what I'm eating. That is pure protein without rice. So I still go out to restaurants. What I have the ability of doing is now, because I'm 9 years into this lifestyle, I know exactly when I walk into a restaurant what I will eat and what I won't.
I see. Well, thank you so much, Luisa. I really
Mhm.
appreciate you coming into a gift from adversity, and you're my
Yeah.
first guest to talk about type 2
Mhm.
diabetes,
Mhm.
and then
Mhm.
this very issues that I'm kind of shocked that
Mhm.
40% of us
Mhm.
kind
Mhm.
of suffering or maybe
Mm.
diabetic
Mhm.
in North
Mhm.
America, and then yeah, I'm really shocked about myself as well.
I'm
Um,
sure you are, and I
uh,
can explain it in two
I'm not
minutes.
overweight, like.
No,
Uh,
no, and that is the misconception. People think that only overweight people are diabetic. That is not correct. Because both my father and my late father were not big men. You're not, from what I can see, Jury, you don't have you're not overweight. Again, it's the fact that your body is no longer capable of making enough insulin for the amount of carbohydrates you are eating. And if you don't do something about it, you will be placed on metformin or Ozempic or one of the other oral medications. But I can tell you why. Don't be shocked. It's the North American lifestyle. You see, the word breakfast doesn't mean eat at 7 o'clock or eat when you wake up. The word breakfast just means breaking fast. I break my fast when I'm hungry, not because the clock says 7:30 a.m. Do you understand that? So, as a society, we've been told, oh, breakfast has to be when you wake up. Oh, lunch is 12 o'clock. Oh, snack at 2 o'clock to get you through the afternoon. Oh, dinner at 6 p.m. Oh, snack at 8 p.m. before you go to bed. Do you see? Uh-uh. If you think about it, North American lifestyle has taught us we're eating all the time. Now, I do intermittent fasting, which means that I go long periods of time and I've actually reset my hunger clock. I now wait to say, I now have the ability to actually understand when my body says I'm hungry, because we don't give our body a chance to say I'm hungry, because we're always shoving food down there. Breakfast 7:30, got to eat, got to eat. Mid-morning snack 10 o'clock, got to have a cookie with some coffee. 12 o'clock, do you know what I mean? Breakfast just means breaking fast. Do you know what time I break my fast? Some days I break it at 3 or 4 p.m. and I haven't eaten since the day before. I also now do OMAD, 1 meal a day. And I'll tell you what, that sounds shocking, intermittent fasting and 1 meal a day. But when you give your body, I consider my body a jaguar, and I'm giving it optimum fuel. It's not hungry all the time. I'm giving my body good fuel that isn't putting it in a cycle of continuous hunger. Because as soon as you burn that bagel, and your body uses it as energy and then packs the rest on as fat for some, it starts saying, I'm hungry again. I need another fix of carbohydrates. So, Juri, do you ever have that sort of carb swing of you've eaten something that's quite heavy in carbs and then you're hungry a couple of hours later? Do you ever have that?
Yeah, so let's actually switch already to
Hmm.
number
Yeah.
two,
Okay.
which is the tools that you use to overcome. And
Yes.
then, so before we move on to this,
Hmm.
Lisa, I just want to let people know you kind of mentioned a lot about keto
Hmm.
and all that stuff. So the reason why I like this part of the podcast
Hmm.
is that a lot of people obviously misjudge, overweight
Mm.
people or maybe
Mm.
diabetes and then all that stuff.
Yes.
And then depression as well. That people will say, "Oh, just go get a therapist, you're gonna be fine." But
Mm. Yeah.
everyday thing. So I want to hear from the real people who
Right.
went through the adversity and the
Hmm.
tools that they used to overcome that
Hmm.
actually worked. So Louisa,
Hmm.
what are the tools that
Yeah.
you use that completely changed your lifestyle and then worked for you that you can share with our audience?
Well, there are several. So, first of all, I believe very much in customizing a program for someone. I find out what their likes are. Does the person have a sweet tooth? Or do they like crunchy? Like, do they like to eat chips and, things that are crunchy? I also do an in-depth get to know the person. And so one of the things is that most people, what they have in common, they're in a rush. I want to drop 20 pounds. And you think about it. Um, you didn't put on for those that are overweight, you didn't put on the weight overnight. You're not going to take off the weight overnight. So I get clients saying, I want to lose 20 pounds in my first 3 weeks. Well, hang on. I lost 140 pounds over 7 years. If you break that down, Jury, that's 20 pounds that's 20 pounds a year. That's 1.5 pounds a month. That's half a pound a week. So when people on chat groups or when I see people saying, "Oh, I only lost 5 pounds this week," ooh, that took me quite a few months. So, number one, I teach people consistent and steady results. You're not in a race. Why are you in a hurry? You've put on 60 pounds, you want to take them all off in 3 months. You didn't put them on in 3 months. So I teach people to start to be compassionate with themselves, because when you're in a hurry and you think you need to drop 20 pounds in a month, if you don't hit that target, you know what happens to a person's brain? You failed. You failed. You didn't hit your target of 20 pounds. Forget it. Bail. Don't do this. Give up. Take the pills, etc. The other thing is too is that people, um, when they fall, for example, oh, Louisa, I have an accountability group that meets every week on Tuesdays, and they'll come and they'll say, I couldn't resist. I've done so well, and I couldn't resist, and that piece of pie was sitting there, and I ate it. I said, okay, fine. Now you have two paths you can go. I screwed up my day. I'm going to screw up my week. I'm going to screw up my month. Are you going to allow that one piece of pie to do that to you, or will you get back on track? Don't allow your brain will always want you to go back to the comfort of, I screwed it up. Let me go back to what I know. No, what you're going to do is train your brain to say, okay, I did that. Now I'm going to get back on. The other thing too is what I say is to just sort of as people begin to learn their triggers, which foods trigger them, I will say count to 5. Count backwards from 5. When you have that temptation, just say to yourself, look how far I've come. Close your eyes and count backwards. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and walk away from the temptation. Go do something else. Or go eat a food that has no carbs and eat as much as you want of it. Spinach, creamed spinach with butter in it. Spinach has 1 gram of sugar per serving. Knock yourself out and eat a big bag of spinach. Go and eat a whole roast chicken. I used to, when I had those cravings for the foods that had high carbs, I always had in my refrigerator a whole roast chicken. And it was not uncommon for my children to see me chewing on a chicken wing or a chicken leg. I ate that entire bird sometimes the entire day. But guess what? It soothed me. I had something in my mouth that I was eating, stopped me from eating the donut that my child brought home. I was satisfying my desire to chew a food to feel full. And at the end of the week, I lost 2 pounds. And so we also, in the group sessions, I typically give everybody a journal page every week. And we always talk about the win. So sometimes a client will come in and say, I didn't lose weight this week. Okay, that's a win. You didn't gain. And they're like, right, I didn't gain. That is a win. Or sometimes people, and I don't make it about the scale, Jury. It's not. For people who need to lose weight, they're always obsessed with, oh my God, I have to weigh myself every day. I help them release that. Because what we celebrate is something called NSV, non-scale victories. A non-scale victory is such where I one time got into the car, I started to put my hands on the wheel, and I noticed that my stomach no longer hit the steering wheel. I had lost weight around my middle, and I broke down crying. For many years, I had to squeeze my stomach to fit behind the steering wheel. That was a moment of such joy for me. I didn't lose weight that week, but because sometimes you don't lose the scale, but you lose measurements. The body doesn't always release weight, even though you're getting smaller. So we always celebrate wins and we take every step towards getting off the medication, getting, every day is a day where you've got to look for the positives. So we turn all the negatives into a positive. I can't have bread. Okay. What can you have? What can you have that will replace the bread? And we go from there.
Well, thank you so much. And then, can you tell us about keto diet and then IF a little bit? And then what another thing, 1 meal a day?
Yeah. Well, all of them, what they have in common, everything, is again what I said earlier, tapping into truly when you're hungry, learning to eat when you're hungry and not according to the North American clock. So keto basically is one of the tools we use. There's keto, and then there's about 4 ways of doing low carb. Intermittent fasting is in there, so is OMAD, which is 1 meal a day. So with keto, it is the most strict form of low carbing. Keto is eating under 20 grams of carbs per day. Half a banana, like I said, half a cup of rice. That's what you're eating. But you eliminate the high carb foods, and there's a misconception that keto is eating no carbs. That is not true. I eat meat with Brussels sprouts, broccoli, zucchini, green peppers, spinach, cauliflower. So what I show people is you can either eat a medium potato, baked potato with sour cream, or you can eat an entire head of cauliflower. The potato will have, and the cauliflower, you can put butter, you can put sour cream, cheddar cheese, bacon bits, green onions. You smother that thing with lots of good fat. The potato will have 33 grams of sugar. An entire head of cauliflower has 10, right? So a small potato or a big head of cauliflower, which usually you can't finish because it's got all that good fat on it. So again, keto is the most strict when it comes to um, eliminating high carb foods. But The payoff? Eat as much as you want. Steak, roast beef, ribs, chicken, whitefish, salmon, tuna. All those foods have zero carbohydrates in them. They will not affect your blood sugars. They will not make your blood sugars rise at all. And you'll be eating those foods with lower carb vegetables. Now, fruit is something that keto does not accept, except for berries. So anything that ends in the word berry, strawberry, blueberry, raspberry, all of the berry family, those are very good because they're low in sugar, high in fiber. I enjoy for dessert a mixed bowl of berries with heavy whipping cream and shaved chocolate and some sugar-free caramel sauce sometimes. So you're not starving, Juri. Does it sound like I'm starving? And I tested how many steaks I can eat. When I started keto, I can eat 2.5 T-bone steaks with butter on top and a big serving of cream spinach and half a cauliflower and a big green salad. So I'm not starving. I hope I've made that clear. And then when you get to your goal, let's say that you're a diabetic and oh my God, keto got you in 4 months. The doctor has said, Juri, you don't even have to go on pills. Your blood sugars are back in normal range. Then what we do is we look at, there's 4 ways of doing low carb. We look at which one is suitable for you to sustain because keto is not sustainable. You don't want to do keto for the rest of your life. Keto is the tool to get you going. Then what happens is you start to add carbs. So maybe you can eat 40 grams of sugar per day and it's not going to affect your blood sugar. Some people can eat 60 grams of sugar per day. Some can go as high as 80. But again, it depends on your body. What threshold? When is it that your body starts to rise? The blood sugar starts to go beyond 6. Normal blood sugar, A1C, is 4 to 6. If you start rising above 6, your doctor will call you back and say, what's going on? Your blood sugar, your last report started to go up again. And then we would have to say, Juri, I think that you need to stick in the 60 grams of carbs per day. And so with all of this lifestyle, you don't count fat grams. You don't worry about calories. I've never counted calories for 9 years. I don't worry about fat. I eat butter, I eat cream, I eat olive oil, coconut cream. I don't worry about that. There's only one thing you count in keto low carb, the amount of sugar you're eating, aka carbs. So it's a very simple way of eating because you only have to worry about one thing. So it does make it easy because when you want to eat something that is harmful, just think of the alternative.
And the intermittent fasting, I
Mhm,
started it after I was told I'm
mhm,
pre-diabetic. And
mhm,
how effective it is, is it? So like 12 hours, I don't
mhm,
eat usually.
mhm.
So before this, but
Uh-huh,
before,
uh-huh,
which was in September, I
uh-huh,
was snacking like only.
uh,
So I work a lot, like
mhm, mhm,
I'm a journalist and I'm a single
mhm,
mom and I'm like
mhm,
constantly working and I'm constantly trying to
mhm.
like wake myself up sometimes from
Right, right.
um, kind of working on my
Mhm,
deadline or whatever.
mhm,
I'm on the movie set or whatever. Then I
right,
have a day and I eat. I used to eat to wake myself up. And
right.
then so I was kind of constantly eating. So I stopped doing that after it was doing diet. And then after I started researching about a little bit
Yeah,
about keto, a little bit
yeah.
about IF. So I am not doing keto, but I'm
Uh-huh.
doing IF. And then
Okay.
I'm doing maybe 12, 14 hours of fasting.
Mhm.
So do you think that's still effective?
Well, firstly, the benefits of doing IF, and in particular, if you're doing it keto or low carb, brain clarity, no more foggy brain wake. I used to wake up, don't talk to me till 12 o'clock, right? So more brain energy, less fatigue, less bloating, less inflammation, um, better skin, more youthful skin. So you see, there's a lot of benefits. Now, how do you feel? Are you hungry during the 12-hour period that you're not eating? That's the important thing, because in keto and low carbing, you're not hungry. So I want to know from you whether you feel any hunger. Are you forcing yourself to stay for 12 hours without food? I don't force myself. I actually force myself to eat after 12 hours because I'm still not hungry sometimes. So that's the difference. Tell me if you're still hungry. Like, are you fighting and waiting for that 12-hour period?
Used to when I started
Mm,
um
mm-hmm,
back in like September, the end of September, and now it's November, I
mm,
definitely had a craving, especially during the
mm-hmm,
night.
mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I want to eat, but like I wanna like
Mm,
stick to it. So I had that. But then when I started IF, and
mm-hmm,
then
mm-hmm.
um I started to get not so much like I
Good.
started to not get
Mm-hmm,
hungry
mm.
often as
Good.
before.
Yeah. So the test will be when you go in to get your next lab report, which I'd like to keep in touch and I'd like to review it with you, when you get your next lab report. Because when my clients always give me their last lab report, and then I get excited when it's time for them in 3 months' time to go back to their doctor because there's always good news. So we'll have to see if the IFing you're doing, but you're still eating like carbs, right? So it will be interesting to see what effect that has had on your blood sugars and whether you've been able to bring your blood sugars down or not.
Me too.
Because it is good that you're giving your body the rest between the foods. So that means that your body is consuming any of the it's consuming the carbs that you have eaten 12 hours ago and throughout the day. But I'm wondering what you're eating, and that's too detailed for us to discuss today. But I'd love to jump off at some other point and find out exactly what you're eating during the times that you're eating. And then I'd be interested to see again your blood results, like your blood your lab report to see what's going on.
Before I forget,
Mhm,
I mentioned on my book, A Gift from Adversity, about
right.
my thyroid condition.
Mhm,
And I had
mhm,
surgery when I was 20 in Japan, and I
mhm,
had a thyroid removal
mhm,
surgery, very traumatic surgery, and I only have
mm,
30% of thyroid. I was hyper, but then after
mm.
son was born,
Okay.
I was hypo. And
Right.
then my TSH was about 16. And then they said I had to be on a medication for the rest of my
Mm,
life. So I
mhm,
said, no, I forget about that. So I did
mhm,
nutrition responding testing. So I
mm,
changed my diet,
mhm,
and then it worked, and I went back to lower. My
mm,
doctor said I would never have a child again, but I have
mm,
a healthy daughter, no medication whatsoever. Then
yeah.
I had a COVID vaccine, and
Mm,
after COVID vaccine, my TSH went up to 126.
mm,
Heard of. And
mm,
then
mhm,
my doctor's like, "You are gonna die without a medication."
mm,
Just so
mhm,
I took medicine, the full pill,
mm,
went back down. So I said,
mm,
"Can I cut in half?" And then I cut in half, and I
mhm,
cut off. I was kind of getting more caffeine and sugar at the time, so I said,
mm,
"I'm gonna cut that." Mm,
mm. Yes, wise, very wise. Mhm,
it went lower,
mm.
and then now I'm cutting caffeine and sugar. So
Okay.
we'll see in
Yeah.
November what would happen. But
Yeah.
anyways, I just want to
Yeah.
share with you. I wasn't diabetic, pre-diabetic before, but I had suffered with the thyroid disease, and it's kind of similar
Mm,
concept. I cut
mhm,
table
mhm,
salt,
mm.
change it to sea salt. I started to read all the
Yeah.
ingredients, and
Mm,
then I started to have
mhm,
colored food like
mhm,
yellow, um, red,
mhm.
green, black, and
Right.
white, um, and
Mhm,
then um, organic food. So
mhm,
this is what you're saying about whole foods. So before the diabetic issue just kind of rose, and then I was constantly dealing with thyroid issues.
mm,
More interestingly, because of depression and then the trauma
mhm,
that I had, chakra here,
mm, mhm.
throat condition. Um, I think expressiveness and then not
Yep,
being able to advocate for myself, not being able to speak out, that
yep,
maybe
yeah.
like unconsciously affected me as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Our trauma can bring disease. We know that. I mean, there's also the genetics. My father was a diabetic. So, my children, my two children, knowing that their father's a diabetic, their mother's a diabetic, their grandfathers are diabetic, they kind of think, okay, at some point, we may become diabetics too. But mom, you showed us what to do. But a lot of it sometimes disease does come because we've we have trauma. And so when we start to look and deal with our trauma, and when we start to also eat to our disease, then beautiful things can happen, right? And so, everything goes hand in hand, mind, body, soul. It all works together. So, I used to go to dietitians who were very clinical. I don't do that with the people I work with because I've been there. A clinician will have a lab coat and say, well, you didn't lose any weight. Did you eat what I told you to eat? There was no compassion. There was no working on the torment that I went through. No talking about the trauma. It was just very clinical. Many of us don't respond to this because I'm sure many of your listeners did what I did over the years. My doctor kept sending me to nutritionists and diabetic dietitians, and I was terrified, especially the walk of shame when I had to go weigh myself every week. I didn't even know the tricks. Some women told me they have tricks like wearing the lightest outfit they have, throwing up, going to the bathroom, taking a laxative before, just so that they could weigh 1 pound less. I didn't know these tricks. I would just go and say, yeah, I gained 2 pounds, you know? But look at the torment people put themselves through. Taking a laxative because you're going to go see your dietitian and she's going to weigh you that week and you're too embarrassed because you know you gained weight. This is torment. This is terrible. The pressure society puts on us as well. When I was big, and like I said earlier, the well-meaning people in your life who say, "Oh, another donut." Oh, shame, shame, shame. Going home crying on my husband's shoulder, right? My sister made fun of me. I know she does it out of a place of love, doesn't realize that she's hurting me, right? So it's there's so much. It's all wrapped up with trauma, things people say. I still get triggered. There are certain things people will say. How many times has your listeners will identify, "Oh gosh, you have a pretty face." Okay, what about the rest of me? That is such a hurtful. "Oh, she has a beautiful face." You know what they're saying? Too bad she's so big. It's very harmful. And right now, I think on TikTok, there's a big uproar because there's a woman in an airport just quietly eating her dinner out of a takeout. She's not a thin woman, and it seems that a person put videotaped her and was ranting and making fun of the person eating the container of takeout food. And thank goodness society on TikTok is defending and rising up and really saying, stop fat shaming this woman who's just sitting there quietly eating what she ordered, right? So society puts pressure, and then the more pressure society puts on us, the more we run to the bad food again. We run to the things that give us comfort. Our childhood has a lot to do with it. What we ate as children, and most of it was high carb foods, by the way, but it gives us comfort. But yeah, there's just so much that goes on with mind, body, and soul. So I work with all of it because transformation is scary. I'm sure, Jury, that having been told you're pre-diabetic, many people are like overwhelmed. When I was first told, I just thought, okay, my life is going to go the way my father's. So in a few years, these 2 pills will become 4. Yeah, I'm going to end up on dialysis. Oh, well, that's the way my life is going to go. Depression, eat myself to death, right? But change is scary. And I guide people into stepping into the transformation that they need to have occur. Because it's all up here. It's what we put in our mouth, but what we put in our mouth is chosen by what we think.
Yes, I have a famous saying, macrobiotic, biotic,
Uh-huh,
microbiotic.
uh-huh,
Which
uh-huh.
a founder said, "We are what we eat."
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And yeah, uh, I can't tell you. Your viewers, I hope they go visit my Facebook. There's lots of before and after photos, and I can tell you, I look 20 years older in those photos of just 10 years ago. Like I ended up going to a conference, and there was these two gentlemen that hadn't seen me in about 8 years, and I had lost a lot of weight. And I said, "Hey, Bob. Hey, Carl. How are you?" And they said, "Oh, hello." And then they turned because they didn't recognize me. And then they turned and they were like, because "Hey, it's me. It's Louisa." And they were like, "Whoa!" That's how incredible the transformation was.
Do you feel good about yourself right now? How you look?
I do. I do. I still, as I said earlier, let's tie this one up. I still have the addiction though, Juri. If I could. And I know you're going to ask me what the gift of the adversity is, and I can't wait to answer that question because it's going to tie into that actually.
I want to also add to that conversation
Uh-huh.
about the tools.
Yes.
So self-love, self-care, self-validation, those are the
Yeah.
very important
Yeah.
self-sabotage that you mentioned during the
Yes.
adversity.
Yeah.
So even you lost this weight and then you are in the
Mm.
clothes that you dreamt of before and
Mm.
on your biography that I read.
Mm-hmm.
Um, even in that stage, if you self-sabotage still, it won't work. So, at some point you have to validate yourself and then,
Yep.
okay, it's enough, like I'm doing good job and like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
acceptance.
Listen, I fall sometimes to my addiction. Even me, 9 years. I'm in my ninth year. There are times, a few months ago, I came home from a dinner out with my girlfriends. I had sushi, I had sashimi. We went to a Japanese restaurant. I had a good time. I come home, I'm feeling good. And my favorite food in the whole world, it's pizza. And I look on the kitchen counter and there's a box of pizza. And I do the 5 second count from five, fourth, walk away. But you know what happened? My psyche started playing tricks. I sat watching TV. Get up and get a glass of water. You're thirsty, which forces me to walk past the box of pizza. My brain made me get up 4 times to get a glass of water. On the fifth time, I opened the box of pizza. There was 4 pieces. They went down my throat so fast, Juri. I didn't even enjoy the pieces of pizza I ate. Then remorse. Oh my God, what have I done? It happens to the best of us. We are addicted, as I said earlier, to sugar, to carbs. It's not the children's fault, even though I yelled at them and said, "Why did you do that? Why did you leave 4 pieces behind?" Because most days, now listen, that doesn't happen all the time. Most days, I'm like, yeah, I walk away. I go get a glass of water. I don't eat that pizza. But every so often, even my own brain will and then I went and had them. So what did I do? Of self-compassion, because I could beat myself up. I could say, look, what did you do? All this progress you made. So I sat with it, okay. I didn't even enjoy the sad part, Jury. Didn't even enjoy it. I was like an alcoholic pouring that bottle 40 ounces down my throat so quick. So it's just sitting with it, having compassion and saying, you're human. Your brain was only trying to get you back into its comfort of where it was. The happiness of chewing on a crusty piece of pizza with gooey cheese on top, right? So, and then I moved on from it. I said, okay, fine, you did it. And by the way, after you're eating this way for 8 years, your body starts to rebel anyway. I got sick. I got sweating. I felt like I want to vomit, because it's like a vegetarian, when they don't eat meat for many years. And I have many vegetarian friends. Um, if they eat meat, the body knows, right? So as a diabetic, my body knew, what did you do? You just had 4 pieces of pizza. You ate a lot of sugar today, right? So I didn't feel well. And that's actually a good way too of your body saying, you did so good. Look how miserable you feel now. And what was the price I paid? Uncomfortable, feeling like I want to vomit. So then that tells your brain it wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. And then the next day I just got back on. Plus I intermittent fasted for 24 hours because I didn't want to eat food again. I was so like, ugh, right? So I did a 24-hour intermittent fast just to cleanse myself a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Luisa, for this
Mhm.
very, very important information
Mhm.
to people out there. And then coming from you who
Mhm.
suffered all these issues and then
Mhm.
try and error, um,
Mm.
it's very valuable to me and then I'm sure to the audience. So let's
Mhm.
actually move on to the last question, which is a gift that came from the adversity. So would you
Mm.
explain to the audience
Yes.
what was the gift that came from this adversity?
The gift was getting type 2 diabetes. That was my gift. Do you know why? Because I'd be weighing 400 pounds right now. Remember, I was limping. I needed hip surgery. Not even the pain of my hip and walking with a cane could get me to do something to better myself, to better my health, to lose the weight. Only when I was finally told that I was a type 2 diabetic did my life actually change. And it was the catalyst to the wonderful life I have now. I dance, I jump, I walk. I did a 5K. I raised money for the Kidney Foundation. So, as much as people are shocked by hearing me say the gift was the disease, if I hadn't gotten type 2, I think I would have continued to eat the way I did and I would have ended up in a wheelchair. My doctor kept saying, if you don't get the hip surgery, you're going to be in a wheelchair soon. And there's an actress called Delta Burke. She was in a show called Southern Gals. And I remember watching an interview and she said the same thing I just said, that diabetes was the gift for her to change her life. And I get shivers because now I understand why she said that. Because I was like, what? She thinks getting type 2 is a gift? It was a gift. Had I not gotten this disease, I wouldn't have had any reason to change my life, to change my lifestyle, to change how I eat, and I would have ended up in a wheelchair. So it was the type 2 that has brought me the most amazing life now. One of the things that my son used to say is, "Mama, I want to be able to put my arms around and be able to touch fingers," because he couldn't. He couldn't when I was that big. My son now can put his arms around me and almost touch his, like, he can go almost wrap around. So do you see the gift I've gotten? I wouldn't have lost the weight. And it's an unusual gift, but I am actually grateful that I got type 2 diabetes. I hope that makes sense.
Well, thank you very much, Luisa, for being here tonight and
Mhm.
having this meaningful conversation.
Yeah.
And my very last request is
Mhm.
if some listener right now
Mhm.
is having this
Mhm.
maybe over 300 pounds weight,
Mhm.
can't do uh,
Mm.
exercise in type 2 type diabetics,
Mhm.
just diagnosed,
Yeah.
what is your biggest advice that you can give it to that specific person?
I love that you mentioned exercise because did you notice I never mentioned exercise? So I lost 150 pounds without doing one bit of exercise. Zero. Because weight loss and managing your type 2 diabetes is about the choice you make of what you put in your mouth. The only exercise that you should be worried about is what your hand is picking up off your plate and what it's putting in your mouth. 90% of weight loss, 90% of managing your blood sugars, even you, Juri, even though you don't have a weight loss, a weight issue, it's what you're choosing to put in your mouth. And what did you say earlier about, you had said something about what you are, what you eat, right? So I lost 150 pounds because I'm allergic to exercise. I hate it. But having said that, I now like to exercise. The last couple of years, because of COVID, being able to work from home, having more time, I started to do weights. I started to do a little bit of stretching. And now I'm getting smaller. I still weigh the same. And because muscle weighs more than fat, sometimes I weigh more. But when I measure myself, I've lost another inch. So, your listener, if there is someone who was like me, frustrated, in pain, has inflammation, bloating, uh, eating all these high carb foods, the blood sugars are all over the place, you're already on 4 medications, your doctor told you that you're going to be placed on more, you can lose the weight you need to lose. Or if you don't need to lose weight, you can bring those blood sugars down to normal range by embracing keto, low carb, intermittent fasting, and 1 meal a day OMAD. They are my toolkit, but I lead people from one to the other. And we use them on rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. There are so many ways of eating, so many. And we didn't go into the medical professionals and why they can't really prescribe keto and low carb. And it's because they're regulated by the federal government in both our countries, and they have to follow the food guide. As a matter of fact, Jerry, my mission in life is to lobby our countries to change the food guides. If you look at the food guide, right at the top is all the things that are making us diabetics. So eventually, before my time on earth is over, I will have lobbied at least 2 governments to change the food guides. And I know I will do it.
That's
I
huge.
Yes, it is. I've already started to, by the way.
If you need a petition, I'll vote one.
And may
I,
I opt before we close, I would like to offer my free gift to your listeners, which is a 2-hour free. It's worth $497, 2 hours with me. Find me on Facebook, find me on Instagram, find me on TikTok, LuisaMorrone. Just reach out and say I heard you on Juri's podcast, and you'll get 2-hour free consult with me.
that is so nice of you to offer that. So our listeners
Mhm,
find Luisa Morrone
mhm,
and mention a gift from the rest adversity or just Julie
mhm,
Love the
mhm,
podcast.
mhm. Yeah,
So we are going to close this conversation, but before we do that, I just
yeah.
want to thank you again, Luisa, for really sharing your life story and then tools that you
Mhm,
used to overcome and the gift that
mhm,
came from it.
mhm,
And to our listener, we have
mhm.
a lot more guests coming from all over the world. I'm so grateful to be here and sharing the space with you and holding the space for you. So thank you again, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you so much, Juri. That was wonderful.